All right, let's talk about one of the most famous objects in our sky, Halley's Comet. This is so much more than a rock. It's an icy wanderer that's been swinging by our part of the solar system for thousands of years. And in a lot of ways, its story is really our story.
I mean, think about it. How did this one thing, which is at the end of the day a big, dirty snowball, become this huge symbol of both divine anger and later a massive triumph for human science? We're going to follow its journey, from being a feared omen in the sky to a scheduled and deeply studied old friend.
So what even is a comet? Well, you can think of them as leftovers from when our solar system was first getting built, about 4.5 billion years ago. And since they spend most of their time way out in the deep freeze of space, they're perfectly preserved. They're like little time capsules, snapshots of the very dawn of time.
But, for most of human history, we didn't see a scientific relic when we looked up. We saw a warning. Before we had telescopes and understood how orbits work, seeing a fiery object just appear out of nowhere in the sky, well, that could only mean one thing: something bad was about to happen.
And the historical records are just full of this stuff. The first clear mention we have is from Chinese astronomers way back in 240 BCE. In 66 CE, it was seen as a sign that Jerusalem was about to be destroyed. Its visit in 837 was the closest it's ever gotten, just 3 million miles away, so bright it terrified a king into penance. And of course, the big one. There it is, stitched right into the Bayeux Tapestry just before the Battle of Hastings in 1066. To our ancestors, these weren't coincidences, this was cause and effect.
The way they talked about it says everything. When the Roman historian Dio Cassius saw it in 218 CE, he didn't call it a celestial wonder. No, he called it a very fearful star, and he was convinced it predicted the emperor's murder.
And hey, don't think this was all just ancient superstition. This fear carried on for a long time. As recently as 1910, science itself actually made things worse. Astronomers detected a toxic gas, cyanogen, in the comet's tail, and suddenly newspaper headlines were screaming that Earth was going to pass through a poison cloud. People literally sealed their homes, they panic-bought gas masks, and they even bought totally useless anti-comet pills. The fear was very real.
Right in the middle of all that 1910 chaos, Mark Twain saw a more personal link. He was born right after the comet's visit in 1835. He used to say, "Now here are these two unaccountable freaks. They came in together, they must go out together." And in this wild piece of cosmic timing, he was right. He died the day after the comet made its closest approach to the sun in 1910.
So how in the world did we get from buying anti-comet pills to sending spaceships to actually meet this thing? Well, that whole shift started with one man who looked at all the data and didn't see an omen. He saw a pattern.
This was a huge shift in thinking. For centuries, the belief was that these were all different, terrifying, one-time events. But the new science started asking a revolutionary question. What if it wasn't a bunch of different comets? What if it was the same comet, coming back over and over again, just like clockwork?
And the man behind that idea was the English astronomer Edmund Halley. So he observed the comet that showed up in 1682, and then he started digging through old records. He calculated its path and noticed something amazing. Its orbit was practically identical to the comets seen in 1531 and 1607. The gap between them? About 75 years. So he made this incredibly bold conclusion. They were all the same object. And he put his reputation on the line with a prediction. It'll be back in 1758.
Now, Halley sadly didn't live long enough to see if he was right, but on Christmas Day 1758, an amateur astronomer in Germany spotted it, right on schedule. It was a massive win for science over superstition. The ghost in the sky had been turned into a schedule. And so, it was named 1P/Halley, the very first object we ever confirmed was a periodic comet.
Okay, let's fast forward to the space age. When the comet came back in 1986, humanity wasn't just sitting around waiting with telescopes. Oh no, we were ready to go out there and say hello.
The funny thing is, the 1986 appearance was actually one of the worst for just looking up from Earth. For most people, it was just this dim little smudge in the sky, a total letdown for the public. But for scientists, it was the opportunity of a lifetime. A whole fleet of spacecraft, called the Halley Armada, was launched to go check it out up close. And the things they discovered right away were just shocking. The Soviet Vega 1 probe found that the core of the comet wasn't bright and icy at all. It was darker than coal, reflecting only about 4% of the sunlight that hits it. And it was way warmer than anyone expected.
This totally flipped the old dirty snowball idea on its head. The data pointed to something more like a snowy dirt ball, with a thick, dark crust of dust covering up most of the ice inside.
Now here's one of my absolute favorite connections in this whole story. Back in the early 1300s, the famous Italian artist Giotto saw Halley's Comet, and it's pretty much accepted that when he later painted his masterpiece, The Adoration of the Magi, he used the comet he saw as his model for the Star of Bethlehem.
And this just perfectly captures human progress, doesn't it? 681 years after Giotto painted his version of the comet, a European space probe named Giotto flew right up to it to show us what it really looked like. From art to science, a full circle of human curiosity.
And what a look it got! Giotto flew just 370 miles from the comet's core. Think about that. To get that close, it had to blast through a storm of dust particles at almost 180,000 miles per hour, getting hit 12,000 times. It was an incredibly daring, almost suicidal mission, but wow, did it pay off? It gave us the clearest pictures of a comet's nucleus we had ever seen.
So what did those pictures show us? Well, they revealed this lumpy, kind of peanut-shaped object about 9 miles long. We learned it's super porous and light. It's actually less dense than water. And we saw its power. On the side facing the sun, these massive jets were just blasting out 3 tons of gas and dust every single second. That's what creates the very tale that it fascinated and terrified us for all those centuries.
Today, Halley's Comet is once again way out there in the far corners of the solar system. But its journey is a round trip. And, well, the clock is already ticking for its return.
In fact, just recently, in December of 2023, the comet hit its farthest point from the sun. It has officially turned around and started the long, slow journey back in our direction. Our ancient visitor is on its way home.
So, you can mark your calendars. The next time it'll put on its grand show in our skies is going to be in the summer of 2061. A chance for a whole new generation to look up and see the very same object that has shaped so much of our history.
And that kind of leaves us with this final thought. We went from seeing a fearful star to calculating its orbit, and from a dim view in a telescope to a close-up encounter with a robot. So when it comes back in 2061, what will we have learned by then? What new technologies, what new questions will we be ready to greet it with? The one thing we know for sure is that our journey with this comet is far from over.